Good evening and welcome to the first On the Couch with Dr. Corne Smith, or what should I say, a virtual couch. We are changing it up this evening and we are hosting an interview-style webinar, almost like Oprah Winfrey, without the free gifts at the end. So for those that don't know me, I'm Tanya Nell and I'll facilitate the webinar this evening. It's my pleasure to introduce my celeb dentist guest tonight, Dr. Corne Smith. She owns a very successful multidisciplinary dental practice in Claremont, Cape Town, and she is famous for excellent aesthetic restorative dentistry. She's also on the board of SARD and co-founder of the Bridge program. Welcome, Dr. Smith, and thank you for joining myself and your colleagues this evening.
Thanks, Tanya. It's really nice to be here this evening. I think it's quite nice to just do something different. It's going to be interesting to see how we do it without photos of just teeth and but actually photos of people. So I think it's much nicer to actually feel like I'm talking to someone and not just for me to see my screen. I hope that the delegates really feel that it's a little bit more interactive, slightly more human. I hope. Because I think we're all missing that human element in our interactions with our colleagues.
Wonderful. So tonight we're going to drill down into the universal flowable composite, which is a hot topic at the moment. Out there in the field, we're getting a lot of questions regarding flowables, and that's why we arranged the evening tonight. So Tokiyama Dental is sponsoring the event this evening, so we will be referring to their products, and that's why there's no CPD points. So thanks for joining without CPD points. You must really be interested in the topic. I will share my screen later just with a bit of product information and info, and then we'll also add some question and answers from the delegates at the end. So the flowable composite resins have been around since the mid-90s, and the early uses were limited to cavity liners, small cavity preparation, and non-stress bearing areas. Through advancements in science, these materials have become much more versatile and they have a wide range of application nowadays. So Dr. Corne will cover some of those many uses during the question and answer session. And then basically it comes down that the universal flowable composites combine the best attributes of a regular normal packable composite with the best properties of a flowable composite. So my first question to Dr. Corne would be, what is the difference between a conventional composite and the flowable composite and the new universal flowable composites?
Yes, Tanya, so I think if we look at the difference between the more conventional ones, then we think of the older type of flowables that we used to use. So these flowables were just less viscous, and we wanted to try and create a little bit more adaptation to our cavity wall. So we wanted something that could flow into the cavity wall or into our preps. So if you think of, for instance, like a indirect preparation where you have a bit of an undercut, we used these flowables to fill in the undercut. We used thin layers, and I think what we also wanted with the first flowables was we just wanted something that could seal everything off nicely. So we wanted to prevent air bubbles, we wanted to prevent post-operative sensitivity. So that was really their main uses. I also think that, after starting to use them, people noticed that we could start repairing little composite fractures with the flowables. But unfortunately, they had some disadvantages. One of the disadvantages was the fact that they had a lower filler content. Now, a lower filler content leads to higher wear. It leads to a higher shrinkage stress. And it's not as strong, so it has a lower strength. These materials were also just available in one type of viscosity, so it's not a material that you could easily use for different applications. Now that's the older type of flowables. And I think they've almost been around since like the 90s or something. I think that's what you said in the beginning. Now with the universal flowables, that's something that we're seeing more and more these days, is that everything's becoming universal. And what do we mean with universal? Universal means you can use it for everything. And the universal flowables have been improved to a point where they have a much, much higher filler content. They are a lot stronger. They're a lot more durable. So in other words, they wear a lot better if you think of the wear rate of the versus the older ones. They're also a lot more aesthetic. So they really polish very well, and they've got a low shrinkage stress. So they really tick all the boxes that we want to have ticked when we think of a normal composite. Most of the universal flowables are also available in different viscosities. So you can use it for normal restorations. You can use it for anterior, you can use it for posterior. You can still use it as a cavity or base liner. You can use it for porcelain and composite repair. And I think that some people actually still use it as a core buildup. I think the bulk fill is probably a better one to use for a core buildup. Fiber splinting, or even like the splinting of little orthodontic retainers, and injection molding, which is like a hot topic. So you can actually use these flowables for so many different things.
Applications. So in your practice, what would you say is the biggest advantage of a universal flowable?
The biggest, well, there's three advantages, I think. Now, the first one is the strength. The older flowables were not as filled, so the filler content was much lower. But now with the universal flowables, we can actually use them in stress-bearing areas. So stress-bearing areas, in other words, where the tooth is actually in contact with another tooth. And they don't fracture and they don't wear off as easily or as quickly. So the wear rate is also a lot better. Now, the second advantage or the use that I have for them in my practice is the fact that I can actually use them in aesthetic areas because they blend really, really beautifully. So the composites that in the Tokiyama range that I use is Estelines and Asteria. And if I use my packable composite and I want to either seal something or I want to add something with my flowable, my universal flowable, it blends perfectly. So the shade match is really, really nice. And we don't get, so if we think of bulk flows and because of the filler content being lower, then we had some gray flowables. These ones are not gray. They are really beautiful and they're a lot more opaque as well. And the third advantage is the fact that they come in different viscosities, which I didn't really think it was going to be such an amazing thing for me. The first time I think Henda brought them to my practice just to try out, I didn't think it would make such a big difference, but it really, really does. It's amazing to have those three choices.
Doctor, you've disappeared, but we can still hear you. So I'm going to carry. Yes. So I'm going to carry on with the questions as long as we can hear you. Hopefully the internet recovers and we can see you again. But I'm going to refer. There we go.
Okay. Sorry, guys.
We took a break.
Am I back? Okay.
Okay, so going on your three advantages that you just gave us, I just want to touch on the strength, because what does strength mean? So what, in your opinion, is a good compressive strength?
Okay, so if we think of compressive strength and we try and if we compare this with maybe a packable composite, a good compressive strength is anything from 380 to about 430 megapascals. And that really is what we're getting with these universal flowables, because their filler load is increased. So if we look specifically now at the Pulfique universal flow, it has a filler load of 70% by weight. Now, Okay, so for you guys that maybe have never really thought about this, or, you know, like I might, sometimes I don't really even understand all of these numbers, but the filler load and the percentage by weight is super, super important when you look and when you try and evaluate your flowable composites. 70% is very, very good, guys. If you go and have a look at all of the other composites, this is a really, really good filler load. And it also, the filler load is, the fillers in this specific one is silica zirconia fillers, which also has some unique properties. And specific to the, obviously to Tokiyama, we've got these little, if you've used the range at all, it's fillers that are spherical balls. So these fillers are actually pre-made. They are little, we call them little pulls, which is also quite unique and also increases the strength, and it gives us a lot better aesthetics.
Okay, then on a question on the polishability. So because of your high filler load, what do you think, or what do you feel of the polishability of this universal flow compared to?
So as I just said, actually, if we think of these little silica zirconia fillers, these round little pearl balls, because of the specific filler and because it's highly filled, we get an exceptional finish. We get a very, very, very good polish. And one of the advantages that I find specific to not just the flowables, but of Estelite as well and Asteria, is that the polish, it stays polished. I've often found that when we do restorative dentistry, especially in the anterior, the polish it's really beautiful in the beginning, for the first maybe couple of months, but then we have to repolish these fillings. And with this composite, but also with the flowable, it stays polished. So that shine really lasts for a very, very long time. And it's different to a normal composite because the spherical balls are preformed and it's not irregular shaped fillers. So it actually reflects light in a completely different way than what we're used to with normal composites.
Then the 3 viscosities. So this is a question that we get asked quite often. So if you look specifically at the Tokiyama range now, you've got the super low flow, which means you've placed your flowable composite, it does not move. We've got a medium flow where you place the composite, it slumps a little bit. And then we've got the high flow, which is more the consistency of your conventional flowable. Where would you use what consistency or viscosity?
Okay, so I'm going to just quickly step back because this was confusing for me in the beginning. So if you look at the labeling on the actual, the flowable, okay, so the one says super low, the one says medium, and the one says high. I thought in the beginning that's related to the viscosity. Okay, so I was so confused. Oh, really? Did you also think so?
I also swapped it around in the beginning. Yes. But this is the high one. This is not the super low one.
Exactly. So I was like, why are these people, why can't they just name things as they should be? But it is not, that's not what they're referring to. So the high one refers to high flow. The medium one refers to medium flow, and the super low refers to super low flow. So if you want to now, I'm going to talk really slowly because it took me a while. The super low is, in other words, the most viscous. Okay, so that's why it's the super low flow. Now, just to relate it to what we know about the flowables, the high flow is very relatable to the conventional flowables. So think of the way that the normal flowables would run. That's what you would get with the high flow. So if you want to use the high flow, I would use it in a fissure sealant because you want to really have that flowable run in a very, very small area, and you don't really have to control it. You just want it to actually run. I would still use it as a cavity liner, but I think there actually are so many other things that we could rather use as a cavity, but this can be used as a cavity liner or to seal off something in your proximal box. Fissure sealants, fissure small cavities. So the high flow is specifically if you want it to flow in small areas where you can't really reach. Then the medium flow is the one that I would use most of the time. So the medium flow is a little bit less flowable. I like using it when I want to, so if I want to use a composite and I want to seal off my composite for whatever reason. So if you're doing a class 4 composite and you want to create a beautiful mesial marginal ridge or something, you want to use a flowable in conjunction with your actual composite, that's where you would use your medium flow composite. So I use this one most of the time. I also use it whenever I want to fill in a gap. I like the fact that it's not as flowable. So a lot of the other flowables, they say that they've got the self-leveling property, which I actually don't like because it actually runs in the direction of the zwaartekracht, gravity. Yes. So if the patient's lying upside down, sometimes it flows way too much. So the medium flow is much better for that. Another indication is for class 5s. Class 5s, that's what the manufacturer would, and I know that a lot of people would use specifically this for class 5s. I use sort of a combination of packable composites still for class 5s. I don't only use flowables, but you can definitely use this one, the medium one, for class 5s. It's really great for porcelain and for composite repair. So the medium one, the way that the material reacts and the way that you can actually use it, you can repair small little chips in composites. And if you use it with the Pulp Fique Universal Bond, you can actually repair porcelain as well, which is quite nice because of the bonding properties. And this is the one that I would use for cementation of lingual retainers. So lingual retainers, it's I don't know, some of you guys might also do orthodontic treatment, but whenever you want to do a cemented lingual retainer with a bit of flowable, you really want a very specific type of consistency or viscosity when you're cementing that. You don't want the flow to run all over the place, but you want it to actually run right underneath the wire. So that's quite a nice one to use for that indication. And then I think what I probably use most of the time with this medium flow is in patients with wear facets. So with wear facets, patients often come to us and they say, die gaatjie, there's a hole in my tooth. I just want this hole fixed. Just fix the facets. It's like a little pothole. But I fill that up with the medium flow. You could probably use the high flow as well. But I find that the medium flow gives me a little bit more control. So we've got the high flow, we've covered the medium flow, and now the super low flow. If you haven't used it, it's weird. It's a weird composite. It's like a weird consistency. It's something that it's a consistency that I've never seen or worked with before. So it took me a while to actually just get used to the material, and it's really cool. It's something that you can use to sculpt. So because of the properties of this flowable, it's not, obviously, like we said before, we can actually use this as a capping layer. We don't have to cap this with anything. Now, one of the biggest drawbacks of any flowable for me always was I can't sculpt, I can't play, I can't make things pretty. But with the super low flow, I can now make things pretty, but in a completely completely different way. So it's really, really nice.
Changing.
Yes, things are changing. So honestly, the super low flow, it opens up a whole new world. And I mean, I would go as far as saying that we are going to see a whole different type of dentist, like the use of restorative dentistry. It's not going to be just a case of flowable and then packable. I think some people are actually probably going to go and just use flowables, which is completely different, but now we can do it. And with a super low flow, you can even build beautiful anatomy as well. So I hope I've covered all of them. Tanya, did I miss anything?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. So I just want to add with the medium flow, that's also where we have the majority of the shades available. So you have the normal A shades, and then we also have opaque shades. So we now have the OPA2, OPA3. Doctor, do you want to just drill down into the OP shades of Tokiyama?
Oh, okay.
Because you are master at that.
So we should actually have a photo. Maybe we can just put a photo on of what they actually look like, because the way I learned it the hard way. We've got one of the first one that you need to know about is OPA2. Now, in my brain, if I hear A2, I think it's an A2 shade. Now, I don't actually know if it's an A2 shade, but it's a universal shade, okay? But it stands for the opacity of the composite. It's a very, not block out, but it's a very opaque composite. So OPA2, what you need to remember is OPA2 blocks out light. It doesn't block out gray stuff. It doesn't block out metal. It's not opaque to that degree, but it blocks out light. If you're doing a class 4, you have light shining through the patient's mouth, and you need to do a palatal shelf of OPA2. So OPA2 doesn't have an OPA1, it doesn't have an OPA3, there's only one. So they could have called it OP, in my opinion. Okay, that would have been less confusing. Then the second range is the OA1, OA2, OA3. Now, it's according to Tokiyama, it stands for opalescence. And the OA1, OA2, OA3 is your universal composite. So that's the one that you can use for anything. It's a very nice shade. It's opalescence. It's got enough opacity. It's not too translucent. You can use it as a single shade composite. And you can also play with some enamel shades around it as well. But the OA2 is the one, or OA1, or whatever shade you want. That's the one I would use for almost all my restorations. Then there's a third one that was confusing to me in the beginning. And that one says A2. But it's red. And I think they made it red as a danger sign. Because it is a dangerous one. If you don't know this product range, you are going to forget. And my assistant, actually, Tanya, now that you asked me about it, my assistant today, and she's an amazing assistant, there's nothing wrong with her. Today I asked her for the A2, and I didn't specify because I thought she would remember. And she gave me the A2, the red one. But guys, the red one is translucent. It's like an enamel shade. It's not a universal composite. It's not something that you can use as a single shade. So if you use the red one, it's going to be gray. You can only use it as an enamel layer. Okay.
Yes. So the medium flowable, you also get OP shade, OP or OA1, OA2 shades, and that just means that the material is more opaque. So to the normal A shade. Then a big question, now that flowables are a hot topic, the big question is, what is the difference between a bulkful flowable and a universal flowable?
Okay, so let's think of why bulkful flowables were created. Bulkful flowables were created because we wanted to save time. We wanted to do things quicker, and we didn't want any shrinkage stress in those fillings if we just fill something from the bottom to the top. So they were designed to be a time-saving thing so that we don't have to worry about different layers. You can fill a cavity from the bottom to the top for 4 millimeters and then cure it. It's not something that you actually have to do in 2 millimeter increments, and that's the biggest advantage of the bulk flow. So the way we used it was we did our cavity preparation, we filled in the whole cavity with the bulk flow, and then we had to place a capping layer. So that was great. It was revolutionary when we could start using that. But it was not as filled. So it had a lot less fillers in the actual flowable, which was what we needed to make it cure so deep. So by placing less fillers, it is also now more translucent. So what we found was that in the interproximal areas, we had grayer filling material, and that was obviously not as aesthetic. And this actual bulk fill still had to be capped. It was not as strong. It also didn't have a very good wear rate. And yes, we saved a lot of steps by using it, but we still had to cap it. The universal flowable, if we compare the universal flowable to the bulk flow, universal flowable has to be cured in 2 millimeter increments. So we have to still remember that this is not a bulk flow. You can't use it as a bulk flow. You can't pack it in like 4 millimeter increments and cure it. You have to still, it's got a curing depth of 2 millimeters.
Okay, perfect. If you can look at tips and tricks, because I know like with flowable composites and bulk fills, bubbles might occur. Do you have any tips and tricks on how to avoid bubbles and what happens if you have a bubble?
So can I actually, one thing I think we should just quickly go back to something, Tanya. Mm-hmm. What we should go back to, I will talk about the bubbles now, but what we should go back to is we should actually go back to how bulk fills have changed. Because remember, the bulk fills, what I was talking about now are the older bulk fills.
Yes.
But the bulk fill that we have available now can be used without a capping layer. That's very important to just note. So yes, bulk fills actually also evolved from something that was just something that we can cure in a very deep box to something that we can still cure in a deep box, but they come in better shades now. So we've got a lot better shading options. They're a little bit more opaque. We've got, and they are a lot stronger. So they are more filled. They're also 70% filled, like the universal flowables. Mm-hmm. So that's a very, very good improvement that we have with our bulk fills. So to summarize that, the difference between the older bulk fills and the new bulk flow is that the new bulk flow, you can literally just place that in your filling, in your cavity, and that is your only layer. Would I do that? No, I won't, because I like for it to be really pretty, okay? And we want to make sure that it looks like a tooth. But can you do it? Yes, you can. So, and then, sorry, Tanya, I interrupted you.
Yeah, I like that. I like that because if you look at Pulfic bulk fill, which is also the Tokiyama bulk fill, I mean, that is the top seller or the main seller or the star of the Tokiyama range. That was the first product that was introduced of the range, and that is a new age bulk fill flowable, which looked after the shrinkage stress side, the less post-op sensitivity, the less polymerization, but giving you the strength, giving you the strength, and you've got an option whether you want a cap or don't want a cap, and you don't get that big translucency. I do in my product slide, I'll show the delegates also just the translucency that we're talking about. What's the difference between universal and what's the difference between bulk fill? Then the bubble story.
Okay, so the bubble story. The bubble story, I find it super irritating if I see bubbles when I use any sort of material, composite, flowable, whatever it is. So I don't want to see bubbles. And I've spoken to a couple of colleagues. I spoke to Jean actually just this afternoon about the bubbles that we see in our flowables. And I think that we need to understand that there are good bubbles and bad bubbles, and small bubbles and big bubbles. And where you don't want a bubble is on your cavity floor. You don't want any open air pockets on your cavity floor. Okay, so that's a bad bubble. And you also don't want bubbles on top. That would also be bad bubbles. Bubbles on the inside the actual, is not as it can lead to probably a higher risk of fracture. It will definitely influence the strength of the restoration, but it's not as bad as bubbles on the bottom or bubbles on the top. Okay, so that's the first thing that I think is important to know. And also what's quite cool about the Tokiyama applicators is, I didn't know this. I want to save money. I own my practice. Well, I co-own my practice. So if I use my flowable, I always used to pull it back when I pass it to my nurse. So, and I never realized that actually creates bubbles.
Yes.
I don't know who told me. Maybe Enda told me. Maybe you told me, Tanya. I don't know who told me this. But it's amazing. It changed my life when I realized I don't have to actually do that because it doesn't leak out. So the flowable, the tip is created in a way that it doesn't leak out. And if you do pull it back, you're creating air pockets, and that's why you get bubbles. So don't pull back the thing. Just leave it. It's fine. And it won't run, and you will get much less bubbles.
It's due to the mechanism in the plunger. So there's an O-ring in the plunger, so you don't get that force. So once you stop, it stops. That's why.
Okay, cool.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen quickly with some product info, and then Dr. Smith chip in wherever you feel.
Do we have any questions, Ed? Has anyone ever
There is a question. How do you repair the composite with a flowable? Please take us through the steps. So you can answer that, Solon, if you want.
Okay. If you want to repair composite, you have to clean it. So aluminium oxide. Depending on the type of bond that you use, if you're using a bond without silane, so most of the universal bonds have silane in it. First clean it with aluminium oxide, then etch it. After etching, you need silane or a universal bond with silane, and then you literally just add your composite. That's it. It's as easy as that. So you want to make sure that the composite is clean though. So you want to probably just prepare the area a little bit, make sure everything is nice and smooth, and that is it. Does that answer the question?
I think so. Very nice. Dr. Smith, I added your slide quickly.
Oh, okay, cool. That's the one with the...
Yeah, with the shading. So I don't know if you quickly want to, just so it makes sense. And then we'll get to the rest of the questions afterwards quickly.
Okay. So there you can see the way that they've actually named these different composites. It's OPA2, OA2, and the red one, A2. OPA2 is the one you use on your palatal shelf. So you're going to build up the area that you want. You don't want light to shine through. You're going to use OPA2. Then your dentine replacement or your universal composite is the OA2. And your last layer, which is like an enamel layer, which is more translucent, is A2. That's the red one. That's the one that you shouldn't get confused about. You shouldn't use it as a universal composite. As a normal single shade composite, sorry. Okay.
Thank you. So I thought I'd start with the price because that's probably the biggest question at this stage. So the Polfik Universal Flow range is at an excellent price point of 680 Rand for a 3 gram syringe, which is very competitive, and it doesn't matter which viscosity you take, they're all 680, including that. So I just wanted to recap on the filler particles. Dr. Smith spoke about this so nicely. It's a silica zirconia filler. The Tokiyama technology, all their composites are built on this foundation, and that's why all their composite materials have exceptional wear, exceptional strength, polishability, blending, and it's all due to this filler particle and how they make the filler particle. So they manufacture it through the sol gel method. They form the spherical pearl fillers, and they don't crush the filler material. If you crush filler material, you can control the size, but you cannot control the shape. And this can lead to scatter when light falls onto the material. And the round spherical filler particle gives very good light diffusion. So you get that infinity blend from composite to tooth. These are the 3 viscosities, your super low flow, your medium, and then your high flow. Indications on the super low flows, class 1, class 2, class 3, class 4, medium flow. Most indications you'll do with your medium flow, like Dr. Smith mentioned, and then your high flow will be more for like fissure sealant, where you want a flow or a cavity-based liner or really small repairs. Physical properties, biggest thing that stands out for me is wear. I mean, again, that is throughout the entire Tokiyama range. If the composite has good wear, it will last long, and the polishability is very good. Flexural strength is very in line with all the competitors around 130 to 150 megapascal flexural strength. That's very important if you have like a class 5 or stress bearing area where this composite is attached. And then also the strength. So I challenge you to go to your offices tomorrow, check your composite, check what your normal packable composite strength, compressive strength is. The Tokiyama Flowables are all around 400 and just over 400 megapascal in compressive strength. And if you look at our ceramic milling blocks and our lithium disilicate blocks, they are all around 500 to 550. So this is very close to that. Polishability we spoke about. Sometimes you can over polish Tokiyama composites. Dr. Smith, I don't know if you know a comment there. Because it polishes so well, you need so little polishing on the Tokiyama range composites.
Yeah, definitely, Tanya. I think that's one of my biggest mistakes that I made right in the beginning is I over polished everything because I was so used to having to polish so much. So nowadays, it actually saves me so much time because I don't have to polish the composite as much as I used to with other composites, and that whole finishing stage is so much shorter.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest feedbacks we get also on new users is the polishability. And then the blend, again, it's the filler particles, you get that light diffusion. So if you use a A2 flowable, it can mimic 2B1, A1, B2, A2, C1, and A3. So it's got a wide range of blending. So it doesn't mean that A2 is just for A2. This also helps your inventory. So a A2, a A3, maybe a A1 will cover most of your shades that come through your door. Then just on the Polfik bulk fill, this is the bulk fill flowable. Also very, very well priced. I'll show you guys just now. Also very good wear, high compressive strength, also just over 400 megapascal compressive strength. So you can expose this to stress-bearing areas, and you know that it's not going to fraction. You don't have to cap it, but I'll show you now the opacity of the bulk fills. They are a bit more translucent, so from an aesthetic point of view, you might want to cap it. Polymerization shrinkage, low stress shrinkage, it's all in line with all your dentine replacement opposition materials, and it's a 4 mil deep bulk fill material. This is what I stole off Facebook the other day. So just the difference between a universal flow and a bulk flow. Bulk flow, like I said, dentine replacement. The universal flows is areas where you would have also used composite, areas where you want the flow or the different viscosities, and then just the differences in opacity. So your bulk fills will always be bit more translucent to let the light through, so you can cure for 4 or 5 mils deep. The bulk fills on promotion at 657 Rand. So per mil, comes in shades, very, very good offer. I've got a few videos that I want to show you just where people are using. So this Dr. Rio, he's quite, say famous, but he's quite popular on YouTube, and he uses flowables mainly for his restorative work. And I just want you to see how he plays with the different viscosities and also combining flowable, the bulk fill flowable. He's good, quite good or modern with his music, so I'm going to give you some. So yeah, he's using the super low flow to build his cusps for his anatomy. I think there's quite a trick to this. You build and cure, Dr. Smith. You've tried it.
Yeah. But it's fun. It's a lot of fun.
So he's using the bulk fill there. This yellow syringe is the high flow in South Africa, so we call it the 12 feet high flow. Forgot to add the music, yeah. This is the medium flow consistency. We haven't seen this one. And he's combining it with the Asteria composite.
Yeah, there you can actually see the medium flow doesn't run as much, which is actually really nice. And there's placing the composite. Cool.
Very nice. And it also, the big advantage, and I think you spoke about it, is if you use the same flowable and the same composite from the same manufacturer or the same range, because this company's A1 and that company's A1 is never the same shade of A1. So if you use a flowable and a composite, it's such a bonus. From the same range, it's such a bonus because you get exactly the same shade.
Yeah.
Okay. If there's any other questions for Dr. Corne Smith, I think we've covered a lot.
Come on, guys.
Okay. That means a job well done.
We need at least 1 or 2 questions.
Just one, yeah. Thank you, Dr. Corne. Thank you for your time. I know a lot of effort goes or preparation goes into going on in the background. We really appreciate you sharing your knowledge with us. I think it worked out well for our first on the couch. Yeah, I like it. It's nice and interactive. At least we can see each other.
At least we can see each other, Tanya.
Yeah, at least we can see each other. No one at home is cooking or...
Yeah, someone's in the bath, someone's watching Seven Alarm, someone's busy cooking, but it's okay. I think they would have listened in any case. So it's really, I think it's quite nice to actually have this type of format. I do think it would be nice to show a couple of teeth where we show different applications. So maybe we can actually do that in a different webinar. Because I think that this is such a unique product and we haven't been exposed to this product. So it's such a new thing that we need to actually play with it and see how we can use this clinically in our practices. So I'm looking forward to playing a bit more, but yeah, we can maybe show some teeth next time.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Dr. Corne Smith. Thank you for the delegates or to the delegates for hanging out with us tonight. Have a good evening and have a good week. Almost Friday. For tomorrow's Friday. Good night, everyone. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.